high. So this is the digital multimeter as you see here. So this is the multimeter screen. Here we get the numbers, okay, in digital, okay, and over here as you see, this is the power button, okay. This is the power button. We use this button to power up the multimeter. So let's press the button as you see. Okay, so here we have hold. This button we use it to keep a value. For example, if we test or we measure resistance, for example, and we want to keep this resistance, okay, we can just press hold, and for example, the resistance, the value of resistance will be showed here. Okay, so of course this we use this button, okay, for the light. Okay, if we use, for example, if you want to do some measurements at night, for example, you can use this button, okay, okay, to light the power meter. Okay, okay, but for me this button is not working. Okay, this button is not working in this multimeter. So here as you see we have P NP, okay, and here we have NPN. Okay, this is for the transistor. Here we have ACBA. So this is emitter, collector, and the base. Okay, and also here we have emitter, collector, and the base for the NPN. Of course, here we have another emitter. Okay, so this we use this rules as you see in order to check and to study the transistor. Okay, so this is the multimeter selector. Okay, as you see, so this is the selector, the multimeter selector, as you see. So using this selector you can select any value or unit you want here. Okay, as you see. Okay, so here as you see, this is the diode and the buzzer. This is the sign for the buzzer. As you see, this sound sign, this means if you want to test or to check a diode or a continuity, you can use this option. Okay, and here as you see we have this sign or this symbol. This means ohm or resistance. This is for resistance. Okay, so we have here 200, 2k, 20k, 200k, 2m or 2 mega, 20 mega, and 200 mega. So we use this to test and to take a measurement for any resistance we want. So here for example we have 200. If you want to check or to measure a resistor that is less than, that is for example less than 200, you should use this. If for example the resistor you assume or you estimate that the resistor can be equal to 1000 ohm or 1k, you should not use this, you should use this. Always use the top value or the value that is greater than the resistance that you want to check. If you are not sure about the resistance, you can use, for example, you can begin with here and then you can select 200 m, and if you don't find a correct measurement, you can go to 20 m, 2 m, 200k, 20k until you find the right resistance. Okay, always you should use the up value in order to test or to measure your resistor. Okay, so here we have resistors. Okay, so here 200 we have 2k or 2000 ohm. Here we have 20k or 20,000 ohm. 200k, k means 3 zeros. Here for the m, this means 60. We have 2 mega or 2 million ohm. Here we have 20 mega. Here 200 m or 200 million ohm. Okay, so this is for the big resistors. Okay, so here as you see we have another, as you see, symbol here, another reference. Here we have V means voltage, but here we have these two lines means this is the DC voltage. Okay, if you want to measure the DC voltage, you can use this. Okay, you can select here. As you see here, we have 200 millivolt. This is for the voltage that is a small voltage. Here we have 2 volt. Okay, if you want, for example, to measure a battery, a 1.5 battery, for example, here 200 volt and 1000 volt. So this is DC volt. Always we use this to check and to measure the serviceability of batteries, for example. So for example, here this is a 3 volt battery. As you see, we have here 3 volt. Okay, so this is a DC battery. So this is the battery for the laptop motherboard. Okay, so here we have 3 volt. So we should not select 2 volt in the multimeter. We should select 20 volt. Always you should select in the multimeter a value that is greater than the voltage that you want to measure. Okay, or the multimeter can be damaged. So for example, for the battery for the car, okay, the car about 12 volt or 16 volt, so you should select 20 volt. Okay, so here as you see we have V and this wave signal or AC signal. This is for the EC. Okay, the same principle here. So as you see we have here 200 millivolt, 2 volt EC, 20 volt, 200 volt and 750 volts. So if you want, for example, to check a power source at home, for example, that is 110 or 115 volt, you should use this 200 greater than the voltage that you want to measure. But in, for example, in some countries, the power source that they use at home is 220 or 230 or 250. So they should use select this, as you see. Okay, select this. Okay, so here, as you can see here, okay, so here we have F. F means farad. Here we use these options in order to select capacitors. Okay, as you see here we have 2N means 2 nanofarad, 20N 200 nanofarad, 2M microfarad. This is a microfarad, and here we have 200 microfarad. Also you should check the capacitor, okay, the body of capacitor, and you will find its capacity. For example, let's assume that you find in the capacitor 100 microfarad. So you should not use this units. No, you should go here because 100, this is greater than 100. So you should use this 100, okay, or 200 microfarad, okay. So of course here we can use also this to check and to study the capacitor, okay, the chemical capacitor, okay, or any capacitor. So as you see here, now we have here AC. So this is amps. If you want to test a circuit, the amps that is flow in a circuit, in AC circuit, you should use this. As you see, we have here 2 milliamps, 20 milliamps, 200 milliamps, and we have 10 amps. Okay, but so here to use here you should select this. We will see you should select this jack. We have here 10 amps. Okay, so as I told to you, if you have a circuit, an AC circuit, and you want to know about the power, the value of the power that flows in the circuit, you can use this. Okay, you can use this, and I advise you always to use the greater, the big value 10 amps, okay, in order to avoid to damage your multimeter or to blow or to damage the fuse if you use this jack, okay. And here, as you see in the DC, okay, as you see, this is for DC circuit. If you have a circuit and you have a current that flows through the circuit, a DC circuit, for example, you use a battery to power a lamp, a light, okay, a lamp, for example, you can check the current or the amps that is flow in the circuit using this, okay. You should select this. For example, I can select 2 milliamps, and then you should connect the multimeter, okay, the probes of the multimeter in series, okay, not in parallel but in series with the circuit, okay. And then you can measure the amps that flows in this circuit, okay. So as I told you, this is for diode, to check a diode or a transistor, or to check a continuity of a wire, for example, okay. So here, as I told to you, we have here 3 jacks, okay. So this jack, always we use this jack, we connect with this jack always the black, as you see, we use this jack always, we connect here the black probe, okay. So always we connect here the black probe, okay. We have here COM, and this is a common probe with these two. COM means common for these two. As you see here, we have ground, okay. As you see, we have ground. So always we connect this here, okay, this probe here. So for the read probe, we connect it here once or here in accordance with the measurement that we want to take. For example, if you want to measure a voltage, as you see, we have here voltage V, even an AC voltage or a DC voltage, we have here V. So we should connect the read probe here and the black probe here, okay. Exactly in this way, okay. Also, if we want to measure the resistor, okay, as you see here, we have ohm, the resistor, the same, okay. We should connect these two here. For the milliamps, if we want to measure the milliamps, pay attention for this. We have here milliamps and here we have amps. So if you want to measure the milliamps, okay, you should use this combination, okay. Here we have the maximum that you can measure using this to measure the amps is 200 milliamps max, as you see, okay. If you know that the circuit, that the amps that is circulated or flows in a circuit is greater than 200 milliamps, now you should use this. So now you should use this, okay. You should connect the read probe here, okay. Why? Because here we have until 10 amps, okay, but here just 200 milliamps, okay. And I want to add that this, as you see, we have here fused, means there is a fuse here. If you pass this 200 milliamps max in measurement, the fuse will be blown or damaged, okay. But here, as you see, no fuse, unfused. So if you want to check or to take a measurement or to know the current that flows in a circuit, AC circuit or in a DC circuit, you can use this. As you see here, we have until 10 amps. But if the current in a circuit is greater than 10 amps, here we have unfused, means the power meter or the multimeter will be damaged, okay. So pay attention for this, okay. So always, as I told you, the multimeter, of course there is many types of multimeter, but the working principle is the same. Always you find the screen, the buttons, and you find here the selector and there the jacks. Always you can find 3 jacks. Always the common jack, as you see, we use this once for this and once about this. As you see, we have here this line. Okay, here we have line, so this is connected to the ground. You can use it with this. This is a fused, okay, circuit. So if you want to check the voltage, the resistance, or the milliamps less than 200 milliamps max, you can use this, okay. But if you want to test or to measure a current that can be more than 200 milliamps, no, you should not use this. Use this, okay. And I want to add that this multimeter use a 9-volt battery. So here we have the battery. This is a 9-volt battery, okay.